streaks of spring have begun to paint the horizon. This new season finds me far from the Vermont mountains, living out of a tiny 15-foot camper. Living tiny has its challenges and so many simple joys. It's such an incredibly liberating feeling to let go of excess, to realize that we don't need to hold on to so many things. I've learned so many lessons lately by letting go, and in this little vlog, I want to share some of those lessons I've learned with you. Lessons about minimalism, mindfulness, letting go, but also a revelation that we are artists of our own lives, artists, creators. And this season has been whispering to my soul, awaken, look within. There is so much inside of you. Is it a trail?
Yeah.
Yay! Hello, sweet friends. I thought I would share a little bit in this vlog about what it's been like living in a 15-foot camper. Some of you may remember and may have watched the vlog that I put out a few months ago now. Wow, time has flown by. Time has just seemed to fly by lately. But I put up a video about how we went about renovating our sweet little cocoon here, the camper that I'm in right now. I made myself some holy basil tea. If you have never heard of it, check into it because not only is it so good for you, but it's so delicious. I want to make some iced because it's a little warm for hot tea, but that's our custom, isn't it? To have a cup of tea or coffee together here on this channel, as you probably know. So I uploaded a vlog about how we renovated the camper and how we tried to do all of this in the most sustainable way possible, supporting small businesses and just doing everything as mindfully and purposefully as possible. One of the things I talked about is how when you live out of a small space, it helps you understand what you really need. And that's one of the best ways to go about renovating a small space or creating a small space, even if it's a room in your house and you want to create like, hey, how can I make this a really nice bedroom sanctuary or a really nice office or a place to do yoga. It's best to spend time in the space and see how you use it and go from there. So we've actually been making little changes here and there as we live out of this space because you really begin to learn just how little you need in your day-to-day life. And when you have too many things that you're holding on to too much in the space, that's what makes it feel cramped. And that's what makes it feel too congested. So the more you can let go of, the more you can release, the more light and airy the space is going to feel. And so we've been experimenting with like different ways to store clothing, and it's really shown me how having a small wardrobe is so freeing because I don't need all this space to store my clothes. And I do want to say that practicing minimalism has shown me not to look, it's taught me not to be so rigid about things like clothing or things like your belongings in general. For me, approaching it in a rigid way, which is somewhat what I did in the beginning of my journey a few years ago, it was to look at other practitioners of minimalism and mindfulness and look at their wardrobes of like only a few things and feel like, oh, you know, I wish I could do that and be that sparse. But it's really not about that. It really isn't about approaching this topic with such rigidity and strictness. It's more about identifying what is it that gives me life, what is it that helps me in my day-to-day life, what are the things that help me to live mindfully, and then just focus on those things. So it's going to look completely different from person to person. For me, I don't like count my clothes like that. I try to look at it more in terms of how much space do I need to store these things, rather than do I only own, 15 items. I look at it more of, does this fit comfortably in the small amount of space that I have? And if it does, then cool. I don't need to nitpick myself too much, because we can get too caught up sometimes, I think, in numbers and judging ourselves. It can become a form of self-judgment. And we really, I think, should let go of more self-judgment. The world already tells us to judge ourselves over so many little things, We don't need to add to that pile of self-judgment and self-criticism in our mindfulness practice, you know what I mean? So just being aware of that, being cautious of that, approaching it mindfully. So that's been a fun thing to experiment with. I store my clothes in a basket and then the little closet that we have that we share to put our clothes in. And it's probably about, I don't know, 1.5 feet wide or so. So it's a very small closet, and we're able to share it to put our clothing in. So It's taught me to look at my wardrobe more in terms of not so much how many items I have, but does it fit comfortably in the space I have? Because I think that's something that in today's world, and I know it seems like I'm hammering this point really hard, but in today's world there's a lot of focus on wardrobe, isn't there? Like, we should buy things every season, and we should get new things, and we've worn that piece X amount of times, so we should get some new things. I mean, you guys see me on the podcast wearing the same thing over and over again, but the point is it doesn't matter. Like, who's to say that we shouldn't be mindful and wear things over and over again, and enjoy what we're wearing and feel comfortable in what we're wearing, and not feel a need to constantly add to ourselves over and over again, each new season having to compile a new wardrobe. It adds all this unnecessary stressor to us, and it also makes us identify way too much with external things. So living small has taught me to enjoy the few things I have and not be judgmental about needing it to be a certain number or like 10 things, but also realizing, hey, look at how liberating it is when I don't have all this stuff that I have to be carrying around. The second thing is, I think it's also caused us to be a lot more efficient about how we store things, getting really creative, inviting more gentle and organic elements into our space rather than needing furniture to store things in, like dressers or cabinets or chests and things like that to put stuff in, like we're so used to doing living in a conventional home. But in a camper we do have some cabinets to store pantry items in, but as far as like clothing and supplements and dry goods and just other random things, we have like baskets and other really fun, funky little nooks and crannies to store things in, and even making art out of some of these things. Like in the little bunk area we have, creating this awesome little shelf for plants and books and stuff like that, and we actually store all our clothing at the very end of the bunk in a couple of different baskets. So it's just invited us to look at how we store things a little bit differently. Like, a few years ago wouldn't have thought to just store my clothes in a basket. I had a big dresser that I stored all my clothes in, and I wouldn't have thought, like, hey, if I actually let go of some of these clothes that I don't wear, I can store them in this really funky basket and it looks really cool. It has a nice organic, peaceful vibe, very minimal, very zen feeling. I love it. So these are all just things that I've experimented with over the course of living tiny, living on the road, and nomadic living has shown me that there's some really fun alternatives to storage and how much we are carrying with us. And you can apply all of these things to your own home or your office space. It's also shown me to appreciate my work more. I've had some really fun writing sessions in this camper, and there's no Wi-Fi, there's no internet unless we turn on a hotspot, and when that hotspot isn't on, I'm totally zoned into my work. I have a book coming out soon. The release date is yet to be announced, but it's called Sparrow Rising, and it's the second book in the Sparrow series, the duology that I have released the first book of. If you guys are familiar with it, it's called Searching for Sparrow, and it's a bit of a continuation series of the Blood Race series, which is the 4-book series that I have released over the past few years. And this series, this duology, has been fun. It's been a different journey, a different path. It's required a lot of work, and I don't say that in a negative way at all, but it's required a lot of work, a lot of focus. And having this little nook that when I step inside of it, there's no internet, there's no distractions, it's very quiet. We're in a very quiet setting right now, kind of removed from the hustle and bustle of everything else. Surrounded by trees and nature, and it's given me this little sanctuary to write in without any interruptions. And you guys know I'm big into taking a step back from technology, but I think it's a cool idea to refresh in our minds that can we find a place to go, even if it's pitching a tent in your own backyard, right? Pitching a tent, and that's your tent of mindfulness and focus. This is my tent of creativity. And when I go out here for a few hours, I'm just gonna write and nothing else is gonna bother me, you know what I mean? Nothing else is gonna distract me. So what are some ways we can create a little cocoon of concentration for ourselves, whether it is a camper that you go someplace in, or a tent, or a room in your house? Can we make a writing sanctuary, a sanctuary for our creativity? I've been so enjoying different art forms lately, going to a lot of museums we've been visiting, and just savoring art and the fact that I'm an artist, and how wonderful, what a wonderful blessing that is. And realizing that these rules and constructs we place on ourselves are really self-imposed. And I feel like over the last few months, I've really had this revelation of stepping back from self-judgment when it comes to art. And I think in today's world, there is so much telling us that we should be judging ourselves based on our performance, right? How we perform at something. And if we don't do good, then we really shouldn't do that. If we're not good at painting, we shouldn't paint. If we're not good at writing, we shouldn't write. If we're not good at fill in the blank, we shouldn't do it. And I just had this moment recently in an art exhibit, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was weeping, thinking about the fact that it has nothing to do with being good at it. Art isn't even about being good at it. Art is nourishing. It is a form of nourishment to our souls. It is the voice of our souls. And so when we do art, it should be for the same reason that we eat a healthy meal, or we go for a jog, or we do yoga. It should be to nourish ourselves. And that's not something so much that I've learned from Tiny Living, but it's something I've learned in the past few months. So I'm putting it as, what, fourth on this list of little things I'm sharing with you guys. But let's let go of this idea that we have to be good at art in order to enjoy it. I've been spending so much time painting lately, which has been really fun, and something that I used to do when I was younger, but I took a step back from because I was getting frustrated over the fact that I never felt like I was good at it. And when I was in that art exhibit, it just hit me so hard that, wow, I'm sorry to myself. I wanted to apologize to myself for allowing myself to believe that. That's sad. That's so sad that I let myself build this construct and put on these blinders, and not allowing myself to see that art was for my own benefit. It wasn't to impress anyone else or to make something that maybe someone else deemed as good. It's not about that. It's about nourishing my own soul and finding my own voice. And it's a big lesson to learn, and I'm still learning it every day. And I don't want to judge myself when I fall into the traps of like, oh, I'm not good at the hand pan, I shouldn't play it, or oh, I'm not good at painting. You're like, yeah, those thoughts occasionally come up, and it's okay. And we need to learn to just be a little easier, be a little kinder to ourselves. Let's treat ourselves with kindness. You know, there's so much strife and hatred in the world. If we're being hateful and strifeful towards our own selves, our own sacred temples, what hope is there for the world? So let's start here. Let's start small. Let's start with being loving to ourselves so that we can be loving to those around us, and we can send those good waves out into the world of loving kindness, you know? So those are a few things that I've been learning lately, living in this tiny space. And I plan on making a video in the near future about decluttering mindfully. I know that's something a lot of you guys have wanted me to talk about. I think it's so important to have these conversations. I love reading you guys' comments, and I love hearing your comments on the community tab as well, because I always try to ask, like, hey, what would serve you guys? What would you like me to talk about? Because this channel isn't just about me. This is about us coming together as this wonderful, loving community, and I love that we are like this small, close-knit community, that we can have this organic dialogue and actually interact and benefit each other. It's just awesome. I love it. I love it, and I never want to stop doing that. So that's really the update of our tiny living experience. We've been living in this camper for several months now, and it's just, it makes you look at the world differently. And I don't think you need to live nomadically in order to have these different realizations I've been sharing. I think everyone has the opportunity to have their own journey with being mindful within the space that you are given, to make it a sacred space for you to have a wonderful, wholesome lifestyle in, you know what I mean? It's so important. So I hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit of what I've been up to lately. I love you guys so much. I wanted to let you know this. I meant to put this in earlier, and I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but I'm also working on getting that nonfiction book out to you guys. You might remember from a video ages and ages ago, I'm coming out with a small nonfiction book that's going to be published in the most indie way possible, 100% from me, available only on my own website. And I'm really excited to share. It's something I've worked on for months now, and I've kind of had to step back from it for a little bit while I was editing the second Sparrow book, Sparrow Rising, because it was just so much work. You know, it's like a baby. It takes up all your time and attention. But now that that journey is stepping into more of the publishing stage, I've been working on my nonfiction book, and it's going to cover a lot of what I talk about here on my channel: mindfulness, meditation, decluttering, how to begin minimalism in a mindful way if that's something you're into, benefits from being out in nature, etc., and so on. And I'm also sharing a lot of recipes that I make. I've talked about plant-based living on this channel. I have a whole playlist of plant-based videos, and I plan on making more in the future, but I share a lot about plant-based living, wholesome eating, mindfulness in your diet, stuff like that. And I share some really awesome recipes for teas and coffee, lattes, and healthy meal recipes and all that good stuff. So I'm really looking forward to getting this book out to you guys, because it's just a fun little burst of everything that I talk about here on the channel, and I designed it to be kind of like one of those fun coffee table books with lots of cool pictures and just kind of a springboard for your own ideas for healthy, mindful living. So I'm looking forward to getting that out to you. So I've got 2 books kind of in the works here. If you want to stay updated on when I release those books, you can join my mailing list with the link down below. I look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments below. Tell me what you've been up to. Tell me how your mindfulness journey is going. What have you been learning lately? What's been making your heart just hum lately? Spring is here. It's a new beginning. It really is. I love that spring is a reminder of that. And let's head into this season with expectations for how can I ground more? How can I find myself more in this season? All the best to you guys. All the love and light. I will see you in the next video. Namaste.